Safety concerns are growing over Apple AirTags. Now, these are small coin-sized tracking devices. They were released last April. The AirTag is designed to help people keep track of their personal items, like their keys, their wallets, their bags. You just maybe attach it to your keys just in case you lose them on a regular basis like I do. Well, some people are sounding the alarm on TikTok and other online forums, though, claiming to find AirTags on their personal belongings, and they don't know where they came from. Their own Apple device notified them about the AirTag, showing their whereabouts and that they've been tracked. The New York Times investigated the claims in a report titled, "Are Apple AirTags being used to track people and steal cars?" ? The New York Times technology reporter Ryan Mack co-wrote the piece, and he's here now to talk about what he has learned. So this is really interesting. The reason that the title is to track cars is because people were saying that AirTags had been attached to perhaps luxury vehicles, and then a thief would be able to track that vehicle and find out where it was parked, where the person lived. Maybe they had luxury items in their home to go with those luxury vehicles. So, Ryan, in a statement, Apple told CBS News that the AirTag is designed to discourage unwanted tracking while informing users of unknown AirTags to prevent nefarious activities. What did you learn in your reporting when speaking to people who felt like that just wasn't the case?
Yeah, you mentioned kind of understanding the motives of why these things are attached to cars or on people. I think it's hard to say without talking to the people that actually do that. But in our reporting, we found people finding these devices, let's say behind the license plate of their cars, for example, or in their luggage, and kind of not understanding what was going on here, whether they were being tracked for the purpose of tracking their car or themselves. But it does kind of instill a lot of fear when you find one of those things on you and you get one of those notifications from Apple. And this is a concern that a lot of people have had, privacy experts have had since the release of these devices last April, that these things would be used to track people, track cars for nefarious purposes. And we're starting to find that happen more and more, especially as these things become more ubiquitous, especially after the holidays, with that coming out as a very popular gift.
So Apple tells folks to call the police if they find suspicious AirTags, if these trackers are unknown. But your reporting suggests that law enforcement has little recourse when it comes to these devices. Explain that.
Yeah, so when you get one of these notifications from Apple, when there's an unknown device near you, it'll alert you about the AirTag near your person. And it tells you to kind of notify the police. The police don't really know what to do in those cases. We talked to a number of women who called the police and actually had to educate these officers about what an AirTag was, for example. In some cases, the officers said, like, we can't really do anything, we can't file a report until we actually have a credible threat of stalking. And in these cases, many of the folks that call the police, you can't understand why a notification like that can't be used as the beginning of a report or investigation. So there's this kind of, I guess, lack of education of these devices at a kind of law enforcement level, trying to understand what, or not understanding what these things can be used for in terms of tracking and stalking. In Canada, however, there have been some reports of kind of officers understanding that these things are being used for car theft, and there have been some reports about and some actual cases about the actual theft of cars using these devices.
I know we're focusing on Apple's products, but there have been similar products already released. I don't know, maybe Apple's like a major upgrade, but I know I got something similar on my keys. I got something similar on my cat, who tends to wander.
Even your phone. You can track your phone.
Apple yeah, right. Is the Apple product different than some of the other things on the market that make it better for, I don't know, criminals to take advantage of?
Yeah, there's been devices like Tile, for example. I actually have one on my cat as well, on her collar. But the thing with that, the thing with the Apple AirTag is that, first of all, it's on the Apple iOS network. I mean, it's a much larger network. There's many more devices out there pinging these trackers that allow it to track the location. And that, in and of itself, gives these devices more power. You have many more devices that are able to track this thing through the world, as opposed to the previous devices that existed, like Tile or Chipolo, for example. And the kind of also the cheapness of these devices. They're $29 devices, $100 for four, and they're just a lot easier to use in some ways.
Why did Apple, I mean, I guess the question has to be asked, maybe this is an obvious one or maybe not, but why did Apple think that people wanted this? I mean, as you both have pointed out, there are numerous devices already that allow you to keep track of your pets, of some of the items that you may have. Our phones already have the Find My Phone, Find My iPad function. I'm just sort of curious why we think that we need a device like this, which uses technology that is greater than anything that, may have come, before 5 or 10 years ago. Why people feel that they need this stuff?
I feel like they just saw a market here. I mean, especially with something like Tile. Tile sold 400 million devices, I think, since its inception. And so Apple saw this market as an opportunity. I think people can see the good use case in this, whether that's tracking your phone, your keys around the home. But with every good use of tech, there's also a bad use case, and there's clearly a negative externality and a nefarious use case here. And so I just felt like they saw a market opportunity. They felt that they could make it safe, but even from the get-go, there's been privacy experts warning about, again, the use of these things for stalking.
Yeah, I know everybody's going to ask about that, but I just think to myself, like,
what I was going to say, Vlad, is I think Ryan and I are perfect examples as to why Apple thought this was a great idea. You probably have a different device on your cat. I have one specifically for pets. But when I heard about the Apple Tile, I thought, I got an iPhone, I got an iMac, I got an iPad. Why don't I just stay in the ecosystem? And I tried to buy these things. They were sold out or not. They were sold out. So that lets you know that the demand was definitely there. I'm sorry, Vlad, I cut into you. What were you going to say?
No, I know we were going to ask about stalking because Ryan just mentioned that. And my first thought when I started reading the research and I read your story, Ryan, was like, my first thought was people are going to use this to stalk other people. People are going to use it. Maybe I'm just a cynical reporter who just thinks they're the worst of everybody. But I just was like, man, this is easy to put in somebody's purse. Even if I'm a parent, and I'm not, but even if I'm a parent, I would at least tell my kid, hey, I'm going to put this on you. But I could see some people just sticking it on a teenager's, in a teenager's backpack. And there's all sorts of I think privacy issues at stake here.
That's actually, we had a use case of that in our story. I interviewed a 17-year-old high school senior in Cary, North Carolina, and she was driving back from a therapist's office one day, and she gets one of these notifications on her phone that she's being tracked by an unknown AirTag. And she gets out of the car, starts searching it, tearing apart the car, running around. And then she texts her mom, and a couple minutes later, her mom's like, oh, yeah, actually, I put an AirTag on the car without telling you. I was going to tell you, but... yeah, and in that kind of moment, the teen is kind of freaking out and wondering if she's being stalked. And yeah, I mean, it's pretty clear that there is a stalking use case here. And I don't know, I think we'd have to talk to Apple in terms of understanding what they thought could mitigate those concerns. But clearly, it's being used in these negative use cases that are terrifying people.
You always see...
So before we let you go, Ryan...
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Vlad. I was going to say, very Black Mirror, one of my favorite shows. But also, I was going to ask about, this sort of stalking wear, because I know that you spoke to cybersecurity experts. Were they concerned? Because we're probably going to see more products like this coming out. What did they say, and what advice did they have for regular consumers like me?
We spoke with Ava Galperin at the EFF, and they just echoed the concerns they've had since the release of these devices in April, that, again, Apple making this device makes it much more intrusive than something like a Tile, for example. And their advice is, just to be educated about these things. I think one of the main things that makes these things scary is that people aren't aware that they can pop a notification like this up on your phone for example. And in some cases, that's people's first interaction with an AirTag. So in those cases, they want people to be aware of these situations, again, how they can be used. And also, I think there's a need for law enforcement to be educated about these things as well, especially now that they're out in the world. There's devices that have been sold out for many weeks now, that have been given out for the holidays. So yeah, I guess education is one piece of that, but also just hoping to bring pressure and awareness to Apple again to see if there could be any fixes to these devices.
It's a fascinating topic and fascinating technology, Ryan. But I was, as I'm listening to you and as we're doing this interview, I just keep racking my brain and thinking to myself, like, what is it that I have that I would want to ensure that if it's lost, I could track it, right? And given that the things that most people find, because we keep our wallets on our phones now, and a lot of private and personal information on our iPads and other our tablets. I mean, other than that, like keys, hopefully people have spares. Cars, I mean, that's what the police are for. I don't know. I'm just thinking to myself, like, there's really nothing because the privacy concerns seem to me to outweigh like any kind of sort of use that I might get out of a device like this. There just seem to be more problems than there are. It just doesn't strike me as something that's worth it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, a lot of people lose their keys or wallet, but and I'm not trying to like promote these devices or anything, but yeah, it does make sense. I mean, there are privacy concerns, and I think the ironic thing about this is that Apple has leaned heavily into marketing its devices and its system as privacy focused. I mean, they've hammered companies like Google and Facebook recently for not being as privacy focused as they are, they say. And now you have them putting out these devices that are clearly being used to stalk and surveil and track. And you're kind of scratching your head and wondering why, and how does this align with their marketing, I guess. But yeah, I think that's a fair concern.
Ryan Mack, really fascinating reporting, my friend. Thank you very much for sharing it with us.
Thank you.